Hello everybody, welcome back. It is me, your old pal Orpheus, with another adventure here on Orpheus Plays. Although today, we're doing another one for the mental health playlist. This is the Orpheus Speaks, I guess you could call it. So this is a chance for you to just put on your headphones or put in those earbuds and just kind of kick back, relax. There's no bloodletting in this one. We won't see any chopping of the people up or anything like that. I don't really, there are times when I like to cover topics in that kind of an environment, and a lot of different topics actually lend themselves to that environment, for the juxtaposition, like having me talk about something that's thoughtful while I'm chopping up NPCs and blade and sorcery. It's fun to be able to do that stuff, but occasionally, and I haven't done one of these in a little bit, I like to just sit down and talk to you one-on-one and kind of go over some things in my life or maybe in your life that may be a little bit more thoughtful and dig a little bit deeper into who I am and some things that have been going on with me. And my hope is that they will you'll be able to identify with something along those lines with what I talk about. And maybe me talking about it will help you a little bit to understand yourself a little bit more, or someone that you know or love or have just heard about, and you kind of think, oh, maybe they have what's going on with Orpheus, or, just lets you think about things. Before we get started, though, I want to tell you something that I always like to say at the beginning of any video that I have that is something in the mental health playlist or strays into the realm of mental health, because we will go a little bit into that today. I am not a doctor, okay? I'm not a therapist. I don't hold a degree in anything in terms of psychology, psychiatry, counseling, social working, anything like that. So anything that I tell you here today should be taken with, I wouldn't say a grain of salt, but don't go out there and diagnose yourself or anybody else based upon what experiences that I give you. If you're someone that has any issues of your own that you're a little confused about, or someone who does have some of those issues, go get some professional help. Talk to somebody. There's even places you can call. There are free or very low-cost resources available on the internet. A simple search on any search engine will bring you to those resources pretty much immediately. Phone calls, you can even text them, So there's a lot of things out there that you can do, and that's what I encourage you to do. But in the meantime, I think it's interesting to share some of my experiences, and so here we go. Now, today what we're going to talk about is a strange concept. I grew up, it's no secret, I grew up in a very abusive family, in a very abusive household. My father was a tyrant, an absolute narcissist tyrant, who thought that physical, emotional, and mental abuse and verbal abuse was the way to go in terms of a parenting style. And my mother was not really the best in terms of her role. We'll get to that in just a few minutes, though. So today's concept goes like this. My dad was pretty much a horrible guy. I'll get into some more details as we get into it. But he always told me something that stuck with me my entire life. I have brain damage and some other issues going on with my memory, so it's not easy for me to remember a lot of things. Excuse me. It's not easy for me to remember a lot of things from growing up. The little details are often lost when you have something going on like I do with my brain. Swiss cheese memory, I guess, is the way you could call it. And so I forget a lot of the details, but this is one that always stuck out to me very clearly. And he told me this when I was pretty young. I would say about 12, 13 years old, somewhere in there. And it was, Orpheus, no matter what you do in life, I don't care if it's murder, if you rob a bank, if you blow up something, I will always support you, no matter what. And that's kind of cool. You're like, yeah, well, it's unconditional love, right? Your parents are supposed to take care of you and accept it, not necessarily accept, but support you through everything that you do. But he also told me he would accept it. Okay. He said, I will support you and I will accept whatever you did, and I will be there for you. I will pay for legal fees, or I will, make sure that we get you taken care of no matter what it is. except, and here comes the big one, except if you do drugs or you go gay. And these are his words. Don't at me on that one, okay? He said, I will accept anything that you do, even murder, terrorism, whatever it is. But if you go gay or you do drugs, I will kill you and I will kill whoever was involved in it if you go and do those things. Now, this is deep to tell someone who's 12 years old, okay? This is something that's kind of, well, it's honestly kind of messed up that you would tell a child this. Now, these days, children around that age are a lot more savvy with life. There's a lot more choices, okay? There's a lot more choices that are well accepted, that are ingrained in our society now. If you choose to be homosexual, bisexual, transgender, LGBTQIA+, whatever it is, it doesn't matter these days. You get to be whoever you want to be, and you will have an entire community of people who support you. Now, the rest of the country may not always go after and be supportive as the rest of the nation, but you will always have a community that will be more savvy to it. And because of that, your parents right now, or the people that you live with or that take care of you financially or whatever, they also will be in an environment where it's a little bit tougher to just shun somebody for being homosexual or even for being an addict of any kind. I come from an era where being gay was absolutely embarrassing, okay? Especially for someone, my parents owned their own businesses, okay? And so when it came to their reputation, back then being an addict, and my dad meant all the way down to smoking pot, folks. So when it comes to, he said, doing drugs, he meant even if I smoked a joint with somebody, he would kick the door in essentially and murder me and whoever was there smoking the joint with me. Okay. So the reputation that came along with that, if someone found out that one of his sons was gay, oh my God, oh geez, Orpheus's dad, what is he how does he handle what Orpheus is doing? That homosexuality, okay? The same thing would be said about if people thought that I was doing drugs. There was such a hoity-toity, high-class atmosphere that was always going along with our family that the very notion that someone's child was smoking the devil's lettuce was this horrible idea that it would have wrecked everybody's lives. Oh my God. And the cousins and uncles and aunts out on the West Coast that smoked marijuana and did their liberal weird things with each other. It was always this thing that it was such a huge stigma attached to things that these days are absolutely just every day. Marijuana is legal halfway across more than half of the country. It's legal now in one form or another. Okay. And being homosexual or bisexual or whatever it is you want to choose. Like I said, you have a community that loves and accepts who you are. And on a fundamental level, people accept that behavior as well. It's, like I said, it's ingrained in our normal modern society for you to make choices that make you feel good. As long as they don't hurt anybody, right? So with my father, when he would say these things, he was a narcissist. That drove a lot of what he was doing because he took murder as this twisted, dynamic loyalty test that he could heroically pass by being okay with it, right? By saying he's the best father because he would accept his son no matter what he did, even murder, even blowing up a plane or something. My dad was fine with that because he would pass that loyalty test. But drugs or being gay, he had this self-image that he was talking about, this flawless man that he was, the man of the house, the father, the patriarch. And he was a very strong second-generation Western European man who the immigrant identity and the self-made man, the business success that he carved out of the bedrock of America, all that bullshit that goes along with that stuff. That was his image, and the idea of being gay or doing drugs was the very antithesis for him, for what that identity meant. Okay? And accepting anything except those two things. It's not about unconditional love for him, okay? It was about me being on a leash. I could only do things that he could approve of, no matter what, except those two things that he didn't like. And what that would do to me was it created not just barriers in behavior, right? My dad would say these things, or your father or your mother or your parent may say those same things to you, like, I will accept anything that you do, don't worry, right? And they're doing it out of unconditional love. My father wasn't doing it that way. He was putting those boundaries there with the penalty of death, not just punishment. Not just being disappointed, not just sending you to rehab or something, right? Death. The idea of killing your own kid because you don't think that these two behaviors are acceptable, but murder is? That's messed up, isn't it? Now, the obsession with my family's reputation, oh my God. He was the kind of man, my family owned their own businesses. And my dad would travel. We had a sales staff that was extensive for this business, okay? And he would personally go on the biggest deals that were being done, right? He would fly to whatever country it was right alongside that salesperson who had initially made that contact and set up the deal to begin with. But when it came time to sign that deal, it was his deal. Every single time, he would make sure that he brokered that deal. And he would also want to do that for me. Police every word, every action. He would even say, my mother would back him up on this. This is some tinfoil hat shit right here, okay? My dad would say, it was funnier when my mom said it because of the hysteria that she would put, but my dad would say, we do not discuss anything to deal with our family. And that was the emotional stuff, the personal stuff going on, whether people were having issues or health problems or whatever it was. We weren't supposed to discuss any of that in public. But further than that, we weren't supposed to discuss it on the phone. And I asked my mom a couple times, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean we're not supposed to talk about family stuff on the phone? How do you talk about stuff? And she would say, and my dad would back her up on this shit, would say, it's because your dad is an international business person and his rivals and maybe even the government have tapped our phones and are able to listen in on what's going on, right? My mom was a paranoid. She's still alive, I think, as of this recording. I don't know. I don't contact my family. I walked away from all that shit like 20 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, my mom's role, though, like I said, I would talk about here. She was not just an enabler. She enabled all this bad behavior by my dad. I'll get to a little bit more of that in a minute. She was, not only enabling him, she was encouraging him. She was the one that would sit there, and if I did something, whatever she thought what it was that was wrong, she would threaten, okay, I'm going to call your dad. And because dad owned his own business, he could say, fine, I'll be home in a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then your ass is mine, Orpheus. Okay? She didn't want to say anything to anybody to help me because she was comfortable. She was comfortable from where she was and what she was doing, being able to sit on the couch all day long, watch TV, sip a glass of wine, go play tennis, go play golf, go to some auction for some stupid antiques that she wanted to buy for her little side business, which was actually a tax break because she made a company in order to buy antiques that were thousands of dollars and not pay any taxes on them. shit like that. She was able to do that because she was comfortable. And so she allowed this stuff to happen and then got rolled into it because of her own narcissism and her own controlling and evil kind of nature, that she started to instigate it because it gave her a measure of control too. She wouldn't just spark the conflict. She wielded his abuse. It was a weapon to her. Now, one thing I often think about with my father, he's gone now. He's been gone years. Thank the Lord. He's been gone a long time. But one of the things that I always think about is I never loved my dad. I never respected him. I only feared him. I feared the threats. I feared the physical abuse. I feared his wrath. And sometimes, I'm not going to go into some of the instances. I've gone into some of them in my other podcasts, my other mental health playlist episodes. Some of the stuff that he did to me was atrocious. Physical abuse, like taking a wire bristle brush and brushing my teeth with them, shredding my gums. I mentioned that in another episode a while ago, and that one is an especially mind-numbing experience to think about. Your own father doing that to you for something that was a tiny thing because my dentist was upset with my plaque or something like that. Okay? When I was a kid and when I was older, everyone would always ask me, why didn't you call 911? When he did something like that, why didn't you call the police? Because my father told me once, if you call 911, it's going to take them about 15 minutes to get here. And that 15 minutes, I get to spend with you before they come and get me. Yeah, he meant that. Okay? I didn't have any sense of self during growing up because I had those two hard boundaries. I didn't know. I didn't know whether I was going to be gay. This was a time in my life when I was formative, right? When I was in that area where I was trying to branch out and think and experience new things and be curious about different parts of my life and different people in my life. And if I saw someone that I found attractive, male or female, the one thing that popped up in my head, don't go gay. He might kill you. Don't do drugs. He might kill you. Right? And that constant pressure, that constant just being on me all the time for basically everything, every move, and those two hard points right there. I don't know if I would have been gay. I'm happy with my sexuality now. I'm comfortable. I'm open-minded. I am not in any way, bigoted or discriminatory to anybody's choices, but I'm the way I am because of, I guess, a narrowed set of choices for myself. Would I have been different? I don't know. I'm happy with the path that I came down because I met Mrs. Orpheus, and the last 20 years have been a goddamn dream for me. But that first formative period in my life was stifled by those two hard points. Okay? I also had the schizoaffective disorder. Folks, I hear music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even in my dreams when I have them very briefly, because I'm on medication to get rid of those dreams because of the PTSD from growing up in an abusive household. I developed something called hypervigilance, which is where you listen to everything. You are always constantly on edge for something that might happen. Right? For me, I have cameras all over the outside of my house. I have something called a freedom drawer in my house, in my kitchen, where it's a drawer full of weapons, right? No joke, in case someone comes in and I have to defend myself. I've got double locks that are electronic smart home locks on my door. I've got bars on my sliding door. And people say that's a little extreme, Orpheus. And I say, no, it's because I have been conditioned to want to know what's going on at all periods of my life, because I grew up in a household where I had to know exactly where my parents were in the house all the time. Because if they were close to my room and it sounded like they were upset about something, then it usually meant it was coming back on me. It usually meant that I was in danger in some way. But it also allowed me brief moments of respite, because when I heard them further away in the house, or if they were sounding happy about going out to some stupid event or something, it gave me a little bit of that pressure release, but not that much. Because if I did drugs, I'd be dead. So you ask, Orpheus, I've paid attention to some of your episodes, and I notice you've talked about doing marijuana in your life before. Not only that, I was also a bud tender and a education director for a dispensary, right? So at some point, something must have flipped, and Orpheus, you're still here recording an episode, so obviously he didn't kill you. What happened? Well... As soon as I went to college, I started smoking pot. I started drinking. I started doing all the things that I could get my hands on. Nothing hard. I think I drew the line at mushrooms and LSD. But I obviously smoked some pot in college. The statute of limitations is way past on this one. So yes, I also sold fucking dime bags and eighths and stuff on the quad at the college I went to. Would have a baggy sweatshirt with the pocket in the front, right? And I would sell anyway. I'm getting off on a tangent. Yeah, naughty Orpheus here. Anyway, so there was this especially big party that I went to. I think it was at a frat house or something. And I was drunk as hell. I was high off I was gone, man. And I decided on my walk home to do the ultra intelligent thing that you can do, which is go home and sleep it off. No, that's not what I did, because I'm an idiot. What I did is I stopped at a local payphone booth. Back when those existed. You probably only see those in museums and tourist spots now. I found a phone booth on the way back to my my residence from the party. I was at college, and it was about 3 a.m. and I decided to call my mom. And so I said, "Hey, Mom, how's it going?" And I obviously didn't sound that good. It was more like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I mumbled and slurred my way through a very thorough confession where I talked about my alcohol use, going to parties, smoking a lot of pot, and doing LSD and stuff like that, because I had spent 17 and a half years of my life in hell, and I deserved that kind of release. And my mom took it pretty well. She said that she would be in touch. She's going to talk to my dad. And this wasn't like, I'm going to talk to her. It was like, yeah, I'm going to talk to your dad. And we'll get back to you. We'll call you in the morning. No big deal. All right, you go sleep it off. We'll take care of this, okay? And, click, hang up the phone. And I stumbled my drunk ass back to my house and went to sleep. And the next morning, there was on the door, and it was a moving company. They came and got all of my stuff out of my apartment and loaded it up, and my dad showed up right at the tail end of them loading up all the stuff. He put me in my car and said, "You follow me home," and I did. And then they shipped me off to another part of the country, found one of the best addiction medicine specialists and psychiatrists in North America, at the very least, sent me to him and told him that I needed all sorts of special help. They put me into another college. They yanked me out of the college that I was in at the time and put me into another one that was within 15 minutes of this guy's office. And I think they chose the college because of that, because it would be a short drive back and forth that they could verify on the mileage that they blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so that was them tightening down even more on what I was doing. If I showed them one little iota of what I was living with, And it was a full confession, folks. I told him I was doing all sorts of stuff, and it was because I felt like I was living through an absolute, hellscape growing up under their just absolute crunch down. They did all this drastic stuff. Well, at least they didn't, at least my dad didn't kill me. He looked like he wanted to when he came to supervise the entail of that. I won't go into some of what happened when we got home. That was a unpleasant night. But, it took me another 15 years of my life after that of messing up. Almost 15 years. Close to 15 years. Of messing up really bad. Doing more drugs, getting fired from stuff, getting in trouble here and there. Like, if you've seen some of the shit on my channel, some of the weird stuff I've gone through. And a lot of that was during a period of time when my life was this mess. It was this tangled up piece of shit. And I always was confused and moving around and doing different things. And at the same time, I have this memory thing going on with the brain damage and everything. And so large chunks of my life that were unremarkable are gone. So there are entire chunks of those almost 15 years that are gone for me. I don't remember where I was, who I was with, what I was doing, how I survived. I was homeless a couple times during that. I remember that. I burned my Social Security card out of spite at one point. That was rough. Had to get that back. Can't get very far without a Social Security card, I'll tell you that. I floated around like a loser for so many years, and fortunately, or unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, I don't remember a lot of it, so I guess it didn't happen or whatever. But until I met Mrs. Orpheus, I did not become a stable human being. I was a floating weirdo just out there in the world because I had fundamentally been changed as a child in this environment where anything was okay. Anything that I did was okay. They would put the power and the wealth of the Orpheus family behind me and get Johnny Cochran and all the best lawyers or whatever it took to get me out of whatever nonsense I did, unless I was a homosexual or I smoked pot. Well, I tested that second one. And they went pretty far, almost to the point where they killed my social life and everything like that. They killed my will to live, to go on at that point. I didn't do anything don't go there. Don't go there. But, it was this difficult situation that formed a lot of what I turned into because of that constant fear, that constant feeling like that person who was supposed to not only provide for me and nurture me and teach me things about the world, which he didn't nurture, but he did the other stuff. He taught me some of the lessons about life. Like if I ever had sex, I was supposed to go to the bathroom right away. That was his birds or bees. Talk with me. If I ever had sex, I'm supposed to go to the bathroom afterwards right away because that's how you take care of whatever. Okay, thanks, Dad. But that was his level. He's supposed to be responsible for you. Your parents are supposed to be responsible for you. Unconditional love. Support you through everything. They're not supposed to say, except these two things. And not only will I not support you in those two things, I will take your life if you do those two things. I still got a drastic response. And it was still something that was a shock to the system that took my life in a completely different and messed up situation, like a direction that just, did that lead me down a weird path. Which ended up with me losing my best friend and a whole bunch of other things. He took his own life because of certain things. I think I've covered that. Yeah, I have covered that in another episode. Anyway, that's why I wanted to cover today, something, a little discussion on like the parents in your life, some of the people that look over you in your life, hopefully that they are supportive with you. These days, we are in a time when the supportive nature of parents is especially important, but it's also something that I'm seeing a lot more of, with parents acting more like friends, straying a little bit more towards being friends with their kids. And that's not always a great thing, but it does give a measure of acceptance. It gives a measure of an intelligent discussion that can go on. It's more likely with someone that you respect and you feel is a friend with you than it is with someone that you see as an adversary all the time. Someone that's always there stopping you from doing things, putting barriers in your face. When your parents say you can come to me and talk to me about anything, because this was an extension of it, of course. You can come to us and talk to us about anything at all, and we will say, yep, it's fine. We'll find our way through it. Except don't talk to us about being gay or doing drugs, because we know where that's going to lead. Right? So if you're in any position like that in your life, I urge you to try to find a way to not just cope with it. If you're stuck for some reason, find a way that you can unplug, get away. For me, it was driving. When I got old enough to drive, I had a hardship license at 15, and you better believe I was out as much as I could be with that, what I called the rolling couch. Right? I had a drink, I had food, I had the radio, I could go see a drive-in movie, I could go, and it was just me driving around and at times just sitting in a Walmart parking lot in my car doing nothing, because doing nothing and listening to the radio was better than being at home being abused. And so I found a way that was an out. I found a way to unplug, but before that, I didn't have that. I was trapped in a world with no pressure release at all. I was trapped somewhere where I was constantly in fear for my life from the man that said that he was there to support and provide for me. And who said he'd support me except for two little things. Right? So that put me into a different mindset before I was able to have any measure of independence, which tempered the way that I approached my life for the rest of my life. If you need help, go find it. It's available. It's free or very low cost. If you've got insurance through your folks or through your family or through your employer or whatever it is, you have it. Go get some help if you need it. Because you don't have to live through the same thing that people like me have lived through. And if you have lived through something like that, you're a strong person. Just listening to this tells me that you are a strong person because you're there listening to it, which means you made it. It means you're here. It means that you're strong. I'm stronger for it. Maybe a better person too, because I've learned some of those boundaries that people can have when they have narcissism, borderline personality disorder, and have children that they think are the molded parts of themselves that go out into the world and mean everything for their reputation. That is classic narcissism for a parent. Your behavior is my reputation. And I know that parents think that all the time, but when they are serious enough, when they threaten death as the consequence for breaking that reputation, that's a different level. And it's something you shouldn't have to experience. So talk to someone if you need it. Leave a comment below. I'll help you if I can. Like I said, I'm not a therapist or anything, but I can at least help you find a little bit of a sounding board and maybe some help if you need it. I'm Orpheus. Thanks for listening to Orpheus Plays. I appreciate you. Be good. Do good. Treat yourself well because you deserve it. See you next time. Bye.